my philosophies in life is you catch people doing something right and you brag on them. You just go nuts about it because encouragement is so much more effective a way to teach folks than to correct them. So I want to brag on several things as we start today. I had the opportunity last week to worship out at Speedway, to be with those Westsiders. And wow, I'm convinced that it doesn't matter whether you're at Speedway or at Lenexa or up at the prison, the guys and gals that are leading us in worship are rocking the house. So I'd like for all of us in all our locations to give a hand to those folks today. Would you do that? Wow, incredible. Secondly, I want to brag on you, both at Speedway and Lenexa. We've been encouraging you guys the last few months to engage fully in worship, and that looks different for different people. For some folks, that means sit really still and really focus in. For others, it means move, and it means raise your hands, or it means kneel. Doesn't matter what your expression is. We've encouraged you, when we're in worship together corporately, go on and go for it. And I sense that's happening. I see that that's happening, and God is honoring that, so I want to brag on you as well. Turn to your neighbor and say, way to go, baby. Baby. Throw the baby in. Yeah. And thirdly, if I'm going to have a brag session, I got to talk about my grandkids. So you knew that was coming. I mean, I just have awesome grandkids. Had the chance to keep them one day this week, and I was up early with them. And just, have you noticed how kids play games almost constantly? Some of them are the standard games that we played when we were kids, and others are games they just make up. I watched our 4-year-old and our 1-year-old this week play 3 games in the course of about 20 minutes. One was sort of their version of hide and seek, except that the older one kept doing all the seeking and the 1-year-old hid in the same place every time. But other than that, it was a really, really cool game. Then they played a game that I would call tickle and giggle, where they just take turns tickling each other and laughing hysterically, and the whole house kind of catches that vibe. And then the third game, and probably the favorite game for these particular guys, is dog pile. Dog pile. It's where you tackle anybody that's in the room, and everybody just kind of rolls around in this really big pile. And the 1-year-old loves it and roughs it up more than anybody else. Kids are always playing games, but I think it's a good thing. You learn some major things about life from games. You learn teamwork. You learn rules. You learn give it your all. And the same thing is true for kids of all ages. Adults still like to play games. Half of the lure of sports right now, thank God, football is here. I know there are some of you that baseball works, but wow, I don't know how. I mean, seriously, you need to get saved or something. I don't know what it is, but football is here, and you know, we're engaged again in this national thing that we love this much and that I love this much, and you know, this whole game thing has got a really big draw to us. I want to talk on this holiday weekend about games. And about the fact that there are some games that if we will use them, we can learn to follow Christ in a brand new way. So we're going to have some fun. Grab your notes. You ready? Write some things down. We're in the middle of a series called Love Proofs. And basically what we're saying is this: love shows up. That's the big idea for the series. How do you know who loves you? They show up. They don't promise to show up. They don't think about showing up. They show up. How do we prove our love for Jesus? We show up. We do the right thing whether anybody else is watching or not. We show up. Another way to say it, love is an action, not an emotion. The United States today, the world today thinks that love is this mushy, gushy, whooshy feeling thing. It is not. It is an action. It is a decision. It is a choice. If all you've got is mush, gush, and whoosh, what happens when your musher, gusher, and whoosher is broken? I don't think that was good English, but you get the point. What happens when that goes away? Where are you left in a relationship when the feelings shift? And they will. We've got to choose that love is an action. It's doing the right thing. And so far in this series, we're looking at John 13. We've discovered several things. Love serves. If you love somebody, you're willing to do the dirty job. You're willing to serve them, whatever it takes. Love models. Love is aware. It's being copied, particularly with our kids. Would it be awesome to get to the place as parents where we could say to our kids, do what I do? Wouldn't that be incredible? Not do what I say, but do what I do. Love endures. We talked about the fact that Jesus never quits on anybody, and we don't either. Love honors. Pastor Brian did a great job with this idea last week. Today we're going to talk about love follows. It follows. And then next week, in our outside time together, one big service, all our locations, love celebrates. We're going to look at the fact that if you love somebody, you weep when they weep, and you rejoice when they rejoice. 3 verses we're going to pick up out of John 13 today. Here they are, Jesus speaking in all 3. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Jesus gives us a clear way to follow. Then he says, now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. Notice the blessing does not come when you know something. The blessing comes when you act on what you know. Knowing alone just frustrates you. Knowing and applying will set you free. And then finally, Jesus says, in a really interesting way to end this passage, he says to Peter, where I am going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. 3 games that will teach you to follow. Here's game 1. Jesus says. That's game 1. Jesus says. We've all played Simon Says. The goal of Simon Says is to trick people into doing something that Simon didn't say, or for them to not do what Simon did say. The difference in the game Jesus says is he's not trying to trick you. He sincerely wants us to get to the point where all he has to do is whisper in our ear, here's what I want, and we do it. Here's what I think, and we act on it. Here's what I'm telling you, and we follow through. It is an amazing idea. Jesus says basically has this game rule: obey what Jesus teaches. Obey what Jesus teaches. Period. Bada bing, bada boom, Italian phrase, no more, no less. Obey what he teaches. Now I want you to add something in your notes that's not there. Would you put a parenthesis and then put no asterisks? Asterisk. Now, if you can't spell asterisk, just draw one. You'll remember what it is later. No asterisk. Put that in parentheses. Lots of us want to do what Jesus says as long as we can have a couple of our favorite asterisks. What's an asterisk? Oh, it's the exception to the rule. Here's a popular one. Yeah, we're following Jesus and we're doing what he says, but yeah, there's this one little area where we've kind of got an exception. You know, we're living together because we're really, you know, we're like married. We're just, you know, but we're not married, and God's okay with this. Really? Seriously? I'd love for you to show me that. I want to see your asterisk. Oops. They're going, well, not real sure I can show that to you. Or how about this one? Yeah, I know my alcohol is out of control, and I get drunk some. Yeah, I know the scripture says I'm not supposed to be drunk, but, you know, I'm a good guy. I think God's okay with it. Here you go. Show me that asterisk. Following Jesus is not a 95% idea. Can I prove it to you? Ladies, here you go. Your husband stands up at the wedding, and they get to the part where it says, do you promise to be faithful and true, to have and to hold, to love and to cherish, in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, and as long as you both shall live? And your husband goes, 95% of the time, I'm in. And the wife just kind of looks at him funny. He says, honey, I'm going to be faithful to you 95% of the time. I want you to know that. Most of the time, you can count on me. Yeah? 95% of the time, I'm going to come home at night. 95% of, but honey, I've got an asterisk or two going here, and you know, and you understand, wink, wink. There's not a wife in the world going for that. And we think God goes for that? The God of this universe has to play let's make a deal? Guys, he don't. He doesn't have to play that. He doesn't play that. And we've got to get to the point where we grab the depth of this verse. Look at John 14. Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching. Anybody see an asterisk in there? There are none. Jesus says means obey what Jesus teaches. Don't make exceptions. Let's have a little fun. Turn to your neighbor and say, get off your asterisk. Yeah, go ahead and email me. I expect some on that. Game number one, Jesus says. Game number two, follow the leader. We've all played this game. Follow the leader. And the game rule is very simple. Do whatever the leader does. Do whatever the leader does. As a Christ follower, guys, you could summarize it all in two simple statements. Obey what Jesus teaches and do what Jesus does. Seriously. I think you could boil it down to those two things. Obey what he teaches, do what he does. Now, in the earthly game of follow the leader sometimes tries to do things that the follower won't do. When I played this game as a kid, if my brothers were playing, I took them into the street. Please don't tell my parents. I mean, they knew the rule that you're not supposed to go in the street. So I'd win the game by going into the street. Because then they either had to break the rule, at which point I would tell mom and dad, or they had to not break the rule, at which point I win the game. That's called bending the rules. Here's the cool part. Jesus is not out to trip you up. He's a leader who wants you to succeed in following. He's a leader who is never going to lead you somewhere that is unsafe for you. Had a great conversation one night this week with Mike Visor. Many of you know Mike. He's one of my heroes. Mike leads an organization called Wells for Life. They've put more than 500 water wells in rural towns and villages in India. Literally have serviced hundreds of thousands of Indians that now have fresh and safe water, and he gives it to them, and he says, hey, by the way, we're giving you this physical water in the name of Jesus, who is the living water. It's an awesome moment to be there when he dedicates a well. Many of you have participated in that ministry. Mike was over one night this week, and we were talking about this. I said, well, what's new in India? And he said, well, we're about to break into the northern part of the country, up against the Pakistan border. We've never been in that part before. And it's the most persecuted part of the country for Christians. It's the most dangerous part. I said, well, Mike, how do you feel about that? I mean, you're going into a dangerous area. He said, if I'm following Jesus, what have I got to worry about? Here's the deal. If you're following Jesus, you're safer in North India than you are not following Jesus in Kansas City. The safety is in following. If my leader is right here and I am literally in his shadow, following that close, what have I got to be afraid of? Who's going to whip God? Nobody. And I literally want to get to the point in my life where I'm following close enough that if he turns to the left, I turn to the left. And if he turns to the right, I turn to the right. And if he stops for a while, I stop. And if he runs, I run. To follow him. To decide that he is all that matters. Look what Jesus said. I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you. I love the next part. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. Look here, church. Some of us think the point of truth is to know it. In fact, once in a while, I have somebody who will write me and say, I'm just searching for deeper things in the Christian life, and could we maybe kick it up and teach at a deeper level? I have such a desire to know truth. Listen close. You've got truth you know that you're not even following yet. The issue is not it ain't deep enough. The issue is, am I applying what I already know? Westside, we've got enough truth to change the world. We've got it. We can change the spiritual landscape of this city if we just practice what we already know. Notice what it says. You will be blessed if you do them. Look this way, guys. All of us want the blessing of God. We want the favor of God in our lives. You get it by doing what God has given you to do and by obeying Him. Had a guy in my fireside a few months back that said, hey, Dan, would you pray for God's blessing on my life right now in this area? And I had him stay afterwards and looked at him and said, absolutely not. You're living in disobedience, bro. I can pray for God's blessing all day long, but till you fix the area of disobedience in your life, God ain't going to bless. We spend our lives saying, Jesus, bless me, bless me, bless me, bless me, when we should be saying, Jesus, let me follow you so closely that I'm going to be blessed because I'm doing what you have led me to do. You don't have to ask for the blessing of God if you're applying the truth that you already have. First game that we have got to really understand is Jesus says. Second game, follow the leader. Third game, my favorite, especially as a child on rainy day holidays. You ready? Monopoly. Oh, I loved this game as a kid. My mom was very smart. She put the Monopoly game in the top shelf where we could not get it as kids. She forbid us to get it out. And on days when it was raining and we were driving her nuts because we couldn't go outside and play, she'd pull out the Monopoly game and leave us to ourselves. We had Monopoly games that lasted 2 and 3 days. I love this game. What's better than taking over the world? I'm going to own it all. I'm going to own the reds. I'm going to own the purples. I'm going to squish you with the yellows. Boardwalk and Park Place are mine. I'm going to own the utilities and the railroad. I'm going to own you before we finish. And that was my approach. And I was so ruthless about it that if I was playing and way ahead and about to put somebody out, I'd look at the money they had and then I'd look at the money that was in the bank and I said, I'll take an IOU. I just prolonged the game to get richer, to take over. I like control. Jesus is after a monopoly in your life. Let's be plain. For too many years, the church has made coming to Jesus about easy believism. Just say a little sinner's prayer, do a little dance, say a little prayer. You're in heaven tonight. No. No. That's the start. He wants it all. He wants your time and your talent. He wants your treasure. He wants your passion. He wants your affections. He wants it all. And the problem is, I do too. When are we going to understand that He made me, He owns me, He owns the board of my life already? He's just letting me play for a time. Scripture says there will be a day that every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. What's that called? Monopoly. Whole world belongs to Him. And when I live my life knowing who I belong to, following what He says, following what He does, the God of this universe lines up on my side instead of oppositioning me. But if I'm determined to be in charge, follow my own rules, and occasionally listen to Jesus, and most of the time blow Him off, He lines up on the other side of the line, ready to tackle me in my spot where I stand. I don't want God on the other side. I want Him on my side. Better still, I want to be on His side. So the idea is this. To play Monopoly, to learn it right, I got to understand, Jesus wants to control the board of my life. He wants to be in charge. How much? All. Little Greek word, what's it mean, church? It means all. That's what He wants. There's no asterisk in that word. There's no exception to it. Listen to what He says to Peter. This is sort of an interesting ending to this passage. He's been talking to him about this, and he basically says, hey, guys, I'm about to go somewhere where y'all can't go, but it's going to be okay. And Peter Peter, the guy who's always got his foot in his mouth, the guy who's always got his tongue in gear before his brain's in gear, says, hey, Lord, what's up with that? Why can't we go? And Jesus says, where I'm going, you cannot follow now, but you will follow later. Peter, I'm headed to a cross. You're not ready for it. In fact, you're going to deny me 3 times in the next 24 hours. Peter, I'm going to lay down my life. You're not ready, but you will be. Regardless of how much you are following Jesus, here's the great news. He always has more. He's got stuff coming for you that you're not ready for now. How do I get ready for tomorrow? I follow him today. How do I get ready for next year? Anybody ever worry about next year, next month, next season of your life, next job, next phase? How do I get ready? I follow him now. I honor him now. I play Jesus Says now. I play follow the leader now. And I learn what I need to learn for what's coming next. That's why Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow. Each day has enough trouble of its own. There's plenty of challenge today. Tomorrow, there'll be more. I follow. And when I follow, I honor Jesus. I want to wrap this up today with 2 questions. Sometimes teaching is simply raising a question and letting it sit there. And I want to challenge you this week. Where are you in playing Jesus Says, obeying what he teaches? Where are you in following the leader, doing what he does? Where are you in the monopoly idea? Jesus wants to own the board of your life. Here's the 2 questions. Write them in. I encourage you to wrestle with them this week. By the way, I'm sharing with you today what Jesus has been kicking my tail with for the last month. He just keeps challenging me. Dan, are you really going to follow me? Are you really going to do what you see me doing? Are you really going to do whatever I tell you to do? He's got more, church, for all of us. Here's the 2 questions I've been wrestling with. Is it time to quit seeing following Jesus as a game and start seeing it as the goal of your life? Some of us see it as a game. We engage for a while, we disengage. We play church, we quit. We get in a small group, it's okay. We're just kind of in and out in the life of following Christ. It's time to quit seeing it as a game. And is it time, here's the big question too, to quit playing Christian and become a Christ follower, a serious Christ follower? The owner of the universe sets the rules. He determines the laws of the game. He invites us to follow him. Hey, I want to talk to you for a minute about an incredible thing that God is doing at Westside. We made a commitment a few months ago to this idea called all in. We're doing whatever we have to do to follow Jesus to reach 1,000 new unchurched families in the next 2 years. Now look this way, this matters. Your giving has been awesome. You're praying off the chart. You've written 1,300 names on that wall out there of people we're trusting that God will use us to see them come to Christ. I hope you're still praying for all of those folks. The first big event for you to be inviting them to is coming up a week from today. This is not just a once a year, let's all go outside and baptize a bunch of people and have a whoop-de-doo. It's not about whoop-de-doo. What is next week about? The KC Family Fest is your opportunity to invite your unchurched friends. Why do you invite them to a special event? Because some of them may not be ready to come to church, but they'll come to that. 10 o'clock, we start outside, one big service together. It will be a blast. We'll be baptizing tons of folks that day. It's always a special time. And then from a little after 11 until 4 o'clock, carnival atmosphere, rides, games, craziness. We'll have live music going all afternoon, a band that'll be going as well. Going to be incredible. What's our goal? More unchurched people on this property next Sunday than ever before in our history. That's the goal. So I need you to do 3 things. You ready? First, come, show up early. Number 2, bring. What do we want you to bring? We want you to bring a friend. You've got a friend that will come to that kind of a free thing. If they don't want to come for the service, that's cool. Tell them you'll meet them at 11:30 by the tallest ride there. Come. Bring somebody. And number 3, we need you to volunteer because we're doing all of this with us leading the way. Now, some of you are going, wait a minute, if I've brought a friend, how can I volunteer and just walk off and leave them for 5 hours? You don't have to. Since it's about 5 hours of fun, what we're doing is we've divided it in fourths. We're asking people to volunteer for 75 minutes, an hour 15. So you can look at the wife and say, honey, you got the kids for the next hour 15. It's my turn to go volunteer. Hour 15. 1/4 of the time you're there, you volunteer. 3/4 of the time, you party. Okay? So how do you sign up? You can sign up on that sheet that is in your bulletin today, the tear off. Say, I'll volunteer next weekend. We're looking for 180 more folks to help make that happen. Next weekend is our opportunity to make a big deal out of reaching unchurched people. Come. Bring somebody, volunteer. Hey, follow Jesus this week, church. We'll have a lot to celebrate when we gather next week. God bless you. See ya. Swim to your car.